We gotta have these conversations. And
It's
at
the
the end of
part
the
of the
day, if people
vetting.
want to vote for power, if people say, I don't give a ding dong dip what they did, unless they rape somebody or they harm children or kill someone, we voting for this person because we want the Republicans out. Well, that's their prerogative. And
Right.
frankly, I understand if that's where a number of Democratic voters especially are, because they've been taking the moral high ground for a very long time and we've been losing. Okay.
Mhm.
And now the stakes are entirely too high to be sitting up on a high horse.
Yes.
Greetings and welcome to Clock
Oh.
It, everybody.
Hello, everyone. We're trying to get it together.
Greetings. We're trying to get it together. I'm feeling very vindicated this week. Can we start
Yes.
there? Why am
Mhm.
I feeling vindicated? Because our former president, Barack Obama, said what I have been saying for months, folks, okay? But y'all don't want to listen to me. Listen to Obama.
By saying, we can't gerrymander and screw things around so badly that some people's votes are worth 4 or 5 times more than other people. That is good for all citizens, not just black citizens. The fight for justice for black folks ends up being the lever by which we can identify, correct, preserve rights for everyone.
Mhm. You
Mhm.
have been saying that a lot. Very similar tone.
Very similar tone. You know what? I feel good that perhaps President Obama listens to our podcast or he sees our clips on social media.
I don't think
Or
that's true.
well, or we're just on the same brain wavelength,
Yes,
okay?
yes, you
Either
guys are just
way,
connected.
folks, that was from a little piece of a podcast at the Obama's production company that they made with Malcolm Gladwell. The podcast is called Reconstruction: The Unfinished Promise.
Yeah, I think the thing that's interesting, Simone, is this makes me think of during COVID
Mhm.
when folks were talking about like the racial disparities of especially of vaccines, etc. The thing that I always came back to, and I feel like it matters here too, is that when white America gets the cold, black people get the flu. And
Well,
what doctors would say
cough,
to me at the
cough.
time, okay, what doctors would say to me was that if you get the flu together, we can deal with the cough and that there'll be less cough, right? Like,
Mm,
and so I think it's kind of the
mm.
same thing. Like if you deal with the folks who have the least amount of rights, the folks who are the most hurt by the country, then the rest of them will also lift up. But like I don't know why that doesn't seem to be breaking through in certain eras of the politics.
It sounds like I don't want people to misconstrue what you're saying, that a rising tide lifts all boats. But to be very clear, addressing the issues of our democracy when they are using black people to attack our democracy, if we address that attack, if we address that
Mhm.
issue, it does lift our democracy higher. But we digress.
Correct. Simone is vindicated. There's a lot happening this week. We are going to talk about the June 9th primary results and the margins. Various southern states are trying to rebrand the month of
Mhm.
June. They want to get rid of pride, y'all, because I guess there's not bigger issues to deal with. They got to fuck with the gays and the queers.
And stick around, folks, because the one and only Neil deGrasse Tyson, who legitimately blew our minds, and I kept referring
Yeah.
to as doctor, he joins the group chat.
It's slightly wider below the equator than at the equator. So we're pear-shaped, not a sphere.
Mm.
You want to know more? Okay. We're orbiting the sun, but not really. Earth and the moon orbit a common center of gravity, and it's that center of gravity that's orbiting the sun. So Earth is doing these loop-de-loops around the sun.
Why do
These
we look so
faces you were
concerned?
making.
You two, you're like, I had never heard this before.
It was crazy. We also talked about aliens, we talked about deep fakes, and we also talked about how bad it's got to get before anything around here gets better. I know it didn't sound hopeful, but it was a very good conversation.
There's not a lot. I will say there's a lot of sad news in the conversation with Mr. Tyson.
But it's
Um,
engaging, okay?
it
I
is
can't
very
wait for
engaging,
people
very
to hear it.
good, very good. But I would like to start the show today with some good news. On Tuesday, NASA announced the crew for their next trip to space. And y'all, we're getting another black astronaut, and really black, Andre Douglas will be a mission specialist on Artemis 3, which is very exciting.
And now I will say I'm very excited about Mr. Douglas and all the
Yes.
astronauts. There is some consternation from some folks online because there is not a woman that is part of this
Oh,
mission.
yes,
But
yes,
maybe this
yes.
means we're getting the next Artemis mission after this one is going to
The
be
one
an
that's actually
all
going to the
lady
moon.
crew.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Simone.
Well, the other mission specialist on this Artemis 3 crew is Francisco Rubio, who immigrated here from El Salvador when he was a little kid. Plus, the pilot is an Italian astronaut. Like, he's actually Italian. This is where we
Yes.
wanted to shout out our producer, Iggy Monda. But you know what? He told me to pop my collar earlier.
Nah,
They
he
tell me
said
my buttons were undone. So I don't even know.
Simone's op Iggy. And these astronauts are going to be, this is crazy, y'all. They're going to space wearing head to toe Prada.
Oh, baby, this oh, this is nice. Oh, you know what? This is gonna be on Shein in about a month.
And I will be getting it. I have a lot of questions about this. I'm sure they made it so that it will work in space, but I just feel like
I
Prada's not
mean,
exactly like space. They don't have space materials. Maybe they were given space materials. Very concerning.
maybe they were. It's a partnership. I mean, clearly, is luxury selling? They're trying to get
Yeah.
us by any means necessary, anything possible. You know, someone who shall remain nameless, when we heard
My
about the
husband.
product, it is your husband. He was in the background of our call. And when we heard about the Prada suits, Nate was like, this is an elite capture of the state. Look at y'all celebrating.
So he was
I
like,
just like the
watch
fashions,
it.
Nate.
Yes,
I just
we
like
the
the
fashions.
fashions.
But Nate he's a good one to remind us that always watch them elites doing something with the
Always
government.
watch the elites.
Stay woke.
The elites were out in full force this week. A lot has happened, Eugene. Where would you like to start?
Let's get into the primary results first. You know
Okay.
me. We now have a lot more information about the voters of Maine. We don't have to keep guessing and thinking, what are they going to do? What they think of Graham Plattner is clear, and how many of them went out and voted.
Yes. Now, Plattner is officially the Democrats' pick to go up against Susan Collins, who is the sitting Republican senator in the fall for this Senate race. But did you know that more than 25% of voters
Yeah.
backed someone else in this primary? And it could have been Janet Mills, right, who had stopped campaigning, or a lesser known candidate. But 25% is a lot. The other thing to note for the race in Maine is turnout is up. As of this
Mhm.
conversation, with only 80% of the votes counted, about 20,000 more people voted in the Senate primary than did in 2020. That, to me, Eugene, says people are engaged. They were ready to make their voice heard. And this is, I think, a window indicative into what we may see this fall, because this is just a Democratic primary. Lord knows what we're going to see come November.
And frankly, Democrats who are extra, extra, extra engaged, right? And so there are probably a lot of Democrats in Maine who didn't vote, and that happens in every state. I will say, we've been talking about this a lot. This state is very interesting to me. Democrats have, for a long time, seen this as like, okay, this is going to be a good pickup for us. And that's what they tell me. That, Eugene, this is going to be a good pickup for us come November. They feel a little different now, but they seem all in on Graham Plattner. I will say, Susan Collins traditionally polls worse than she performs, actually. There are many reasons for this. One, this is a blue state, right? It's like largely a blue state.
Well, yes, okay, yes, but she has represented the state for forever.
And this is why she keeps winning. One, she is the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, meaning she is able to be like, I'm bringing money back to my state. So that's number one. Number two, she has voted 10,000 times. She hasn't missed any votes at all since she's been in the Senate. And three, she has been able to not convince a bunch of Democrats that they should love her, but Republicans and independents. So when you look at the buckets of how folks vote in Maine, there's mostly Democrats, right? There's a huge swath of Democrats. And then the next group is independents and then Republicans. And so Susan Collins has been able to get those bottom two, and that's how she's been winning over and over and over again. And I think Democrats have to figure out a way to slough off the independents. I don't think they're going to get a bunch of Republicans who are
No,
going
I don't think
to
so
run
either.
away
I
from
think these
her,
people
but they
who
should
are
focus
talking
on
about
independents.
these people who talk about, oh, Democrats, they have to appeal to the Republican voters. I think Democrats have to appeal to their base and then the swing voter. And the swing voter, frankly, sometimes a Democratic voter is a swing voter. They need to be
Right.
persuaded, child, but that's
Nowadays.
another story nowadays. But I don't think the focus should be about trying to get Republicans. I think the focus should be, again, turnout was up in this primary race, if the turnout is high on the side of very motivated Democratic voters and some of those
Mhm.
swing independents that don't like what they're seeing, and there's not as much excitement on the Republican side of the aisle, I think that it bodes well for Democrats. Can I just say this about the whole Graham Plattner thing?
Uh-oh.
Um,
Go ahead.
I think two things, right? Two things can be true at the same time. One, I think that Democrats are having a different conversation in
Yeah.
this particular race about power.
Yes.
And the reason people have, from the DSCC, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, to Democratic leadership in the state of Maine, the reason they didn't poo-poo Plattner right away and walk away from him is because they want to win this seat. And
Right.
and they want to win this seat by any means necessary. So if Graham Plattner is a person that they think voters are going to support, then they're going to support Graham Plattner. Nazi tattoo be damned that he has since gotten removed because he
Covered
didn't
up.
know it was a covered up since he didn't know it was a Nazi tattoo. Whether people believe Graham Plattner or not, I'm gonna leave that up to them. Do I think
Mhm.
some of the explanations sound believable? No.
Right.
But it has been working for the people in Maine, and the voters are the folks that get the final say. There's always all this pop and circumstance and these predilections and these
Right.
things that the consultants and the pundits want to say. And I guess I'm a pundit now, right? Or at least I'm an
Yes.
anchor. I'm an anchor,
Uh-huh.
baby.
She's a
I'm
host,
a
honey.
I'm a host with experience.
Yes.
But the voters are the people at the end of the day that will have a say. And I think the voters in Maine are being very, very clear that they're willing to forgive a lot. The Democratic voters, at least, because they want to win. They want power. They have seen what Susan Collins said
Forgive
she was
or
going to do.
ignore. Forgive or ignore, right? I think like I heard from a lot of voters of his were that they were, some of them were like not happy about Graham Plattner and these accusations, and they were
What are the
worried that
accusations?
well, there are a few. So there's the first, you start with the Nazi tattoo, the way that he talked about Black people and women and sexual assault survivors on Reddit. So that's one bucket of things. There's him using the R word, which he had to apologize for. There were the accusations, and apparently it was true because he and his wife talked about it publicly, that he had at least cheated on his wife through text messages and was
He
having
was exchanging sexually explicit messages.
SEXTSs, sex with, he says, adults. So we have no other reason to believe anything else, but some of the questions have been asked of him. Are you sure everybody was 18? He said yes.
I know you want to give some privacy to your marriage, but I really do feel like I need to get these answers from you, which is like, the people you were texting with, whatever that was, in whatever context they were adult women, you knew that, and it was consensual. Is that true?
Yes.
And you have that you confirmed that. You knew their age.
Yes. Oh, God. I mean, yeah. Yes, of course.
So that's another bucket. And that came out. He and his wife said, like, basically, mind your business. This is our marriage. And there was another where there was this very long report in the New York Times where you have this woman who says the two of them had a relationship. She is a Republican operative who they had a relationship for a while. She says he was aggressive with her. She said that she knew that it was a Nazi tattoo and basically said, she wasn't sure why he didn't know it was a Nazi tattoo. He denies all of these things. And there were women who had dated him in that article who said that he was a fine boyfriend. I will say Graham Plattner has talked about being a shitty boyfriend, right? He said publicly that he was a shitty boyfriend, that he was in a dark space in his past. And so this is just adding more detail to something I think voters already knew. So it's not a new revelation per se. The details are interesting and important for folks to talk about because despite power being super important, I think, people still care about the morals of their leaders, or Democrats say that they do. Now, you look at the
Yeah.
Republican side, and I think what people are weighing is Donald Trump is a felon. 34 counts, found guilty. 2, he has been found liable for sexual misconduct with E. Jean Carroll. There are all these stories about him cheating on his own wives with the next wife. There are all of these other types of allegations around Donald Trump and other Republicans, right, that are like in the similar vein or worse than what Graham Plattner is accused of. And so my question is, as someone who covers politics, and frankly cares about the way that politics can actually change people's lives, and how power can be utilized and wielded to make the lives of the American people and the people that live in this country better, is, I do think we should ask more of our leaders. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
that's just me.
Look,
I
we
don't.
should
I don't know.
we should ask more of our leaders. I don't think you're
Because if he was
wrong.
black, if he was
But
a woman,
well,
if he was
well,
black, he was a woman,
if he was black or he
queer,
was a woman, they might not have.
he would have
They, as in the voters,
he would have been
history has
gone.
shown the
Hmm.
voters in other instances have not been as forgiving, if you will, or as graceful or as willing to give grace as they seem to be in this situation. But maybe this is specific to the voters in Maine. I don't know. I will just say this because the people are like, sometimes the people in the comments shout out, I don't respond to them on the
Gotta
internet. I
stop
just come
reading
here.
them.
I need to be, I like to be an informed citizen. And
That is not what that is not what that phrase means. You are not a more informed citizen by the comments.
I feel very more informed. The folks who are like, oh, why are y'all focusing on this, trying to tear him down? What about Susan Collins? You are not being helpful. I want to be very clear. You don't actually get to have your cake and eat it too, which is a phrase I actually don't understand. Because if I'm buying the cake, why am I not eating it? So I'm a look it up. So maybe
Right.
this is a bad
It's a phrase that
example.
makes no sense.
Right?
It actually
Like,
is stupid.
you don't get to have your cake and eat it too. Well, then why
So
the fuck
did
do I
I
have the
buy
cake?
it?
Why we got the damn cake?
Am I supposed to look at the cake? Take pictures?
Right? Like,
Maybe that's for the Instagram
I'm spending money on a
generation.
cake in this economy. My point is that people don't want to talk about Graham Plattner or frankly any of the shortcomings of Democratic candidates, right? Democratic voters don't seem to want to do that. But everybody was jumping on the bandwagon to talk about Ken Paxton. And in my opinion, rightfully so, because he
Yes.
is very problematic. Okay. Somebody else who has been investigated by the FBI, his own staff called on him. He literally
Yes.
cheated on his wife, was misappropriating funds allegedly, and
Uh-huh.
survived an
Yep.
impeachment attempt in Texas. And so I do think that the conduct of the elected officials is not something that we can not discuss just because somebody is a Democrat or an independent or has a good chance of beating a Republican. Folks got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. Maybe that's a better analogy.
That's a much better
And
analogy.
right? They ought to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. And we got to have these conversations. And
It's
at
the
the end
part
of
of
the
the
day, if people
vetting.
want to vote for power, if people say, I don't give a ding dong dip what they did, unless they rape somebody or they harm children or kill someone, we voting for this person because we want the Republicans out. Well, that's their prerogative. And
Right.
frankly, I understand if that's where a number of Democratic voters especially are, because they've been taking the moral high ground for a very long time and we've been losing. Okay.
Mhm.
And now the stakes are entirely too high to be sitting up on a high horse.
Yes. And I think that is what's so interesting about this moment is we're forced to have a different conversation about what it means to wield power and who's allowed to have it. And I think, I've talked to a lot of Democrats, Simone, who said that they want to see more people, the party has said, and then they, it's not always ends up being true. The leadership doesn't always go this way, but they want to see like regular people running for office, right? They want to see people who aren't as polished, people who aren't, professional politicians, people who don't seem like they've been put through a McKinsey factory or that came and lived in DC for a very long time and worked on the Hill and had all these connections. They don't want to see that anymore. They want to see people who they recognize. They want to see people like Graham Plattner, AOC, who was a bartender, right? People who had regular jobs before they decided to come to Washington, D.C. But when you have that, the vetting happens publicly. He was on Morning Joe on Wednesday afternoon, and our girl Mika asked him if there were going to be any other things that were concerning that
And what
were
did he
going to come
say?
out. He said, he tried to kind of interrupted her and goes, well, there's nothing that's
out there that's
actually
actually
concerning.
People will make everything seem very concerning because that's what people do in politics. But I think the thing about all of this is what I find to be kind of most curious is this is what everyone wants to make the campaign about. So we do not talk about the struggles of working Mainers.
Now, I don't know what it actually means, but here we are.
I think the last point I want to make specifically about Graham Plattner, and then, I mean, broader about the map, if you will, coming into
Yeah.
November, is that when people say they want more regular folks in office, and that's what
Hmm.
Plattner himself has been saying. He's like, look, I'm
Yeah.
not perfect.
Oyster
I'm not a professional
farmer. Yeah.
politician. Exactly. He's like, I've made mistakes. I went and served my country. I came back with, some trauma, and it caused me to make mistakes. I think that, yes, I agree with more regular folk that people can identify with running for office across the political spectrum. But I don't know a lot of regular folk with a Nazi tattoo.
Well.
Regular, you know what I'm saying? And so, sure,
Hmm.
people are imperfect, but
Speak for
sometimes when things are
yourself.
coming out, oh, okay, all right, as he pops the fro.
Mm,
Well, I
mm,
am an
mm.
imperfect person. Most people are imperfect. There are levels to this, and when
Right.
I'm concerned when I'm hearing people say, "I don't like this part about politics. I don't like when they're digging up dirt on people." The reason things like this matter is because you elect the officials to make the political decisions, right? It's the elected officials to make the decisions about legislation. It's the president that's making the decision if we dropping a
Hmm.
bomb or not, sending
Right.
our young men and women into war. What kind of person that person is does matter. What they
Yeah.
believe does matter. And so that's why people have
Whether
to
they
do the
tell you the
digging.
truth.
Come on now.
Because Graham Plattner is someone who went to the Hill, came to Washington D.C., and sat there and told senators in a meeting that nothing else was coming out, and then literally within 36 hours, that story comes out from the New York Times about his alleged treatment
Mm,
of
mm, mm.
ex-girlfriends, and
My
so
eyelash
like
was getting stuck together. I was like, oh,
that was
Lord.
the stress. And so, like, that's the question. And again, maybe voters don't care, but you know who does care? The people that work here in Washington,
Mhm.
D.C., and on the Hill, the people that are going to be in meetings with these folks. They want to know who this kind of person is. They want to know who, and I think a lot of the women on Capitol Hill, especially when it comes to men possibly behaving badly, wherever, there's obviously levels to badly. Um,
Mhm.
but like, they want to know who are you bringing to Washington D.C. that's going to be around us. And I think it's not just Graham Plattner. Obviously, there's the question about Kim Paxton, right? There's just like a lot of people that are running that have baggage, but the parties are allowed to have conversations about, do we want this kind of person representing us? And then let's not forget, a lot of people are like, John Fetterman reminds me of Graham Plattner. Well, John Fetterman is here, and there are a lot of people who are like, he lied to us about who he was.
There's a lot of people that owe Connor Lamb an apology. Let's just say that. In the case of John Fetterman, there were people that tried to point out
Black people.
come on, he wasn't who he was saying he was, or
Mhm.
he was still who he used to be. Come on, catch it. If
Right,
you get it, catch it.
right.
And now we are seeing what John Fetterman is doing. Now we'll see what happens in November. You don't
Yeah.
think Susan Collins gonna get beat? I think that she could. But
It's
I would just
hard.
say
I
this:
think it's going to be
even if they
extremely
don't,
difficult to beat her.
even
Like,
if they don't, Maine is not the only place in which gives Democrats the opportunity to take
right.
back the United States Senate.
Iowa,
I
I
do
think,
think,
is probably a better chance for them than it has been before.
and Mississippi, Scott
Yeah.
Cullum is running against the sitting Senator Cindy Hyde Smith.
Hmm.
Who Scott Cullum? He's a current DA down in Jackson. He was nominated to be a judge during the Biden administration, and Cindy Hyde Smith wouldn't sign off on it. Now he happens to be black. Democrats and Republicans and independents have voted for him. The people in Mississippi say they don't really see Cindy Hyde Smith. She don't really campaign. She ain't never knocked no door. She has bad constituent services. And recently she did an interview, like a local interview. She was asked about the economy, and she's basically just like, people got to just make some different decisions.
You have so many proteins to choose from, I think was the quote.
What do you think Republicans are doing right now? You're involved closely with agriculture. You're on the committee. Price of food is high. We just did a story this week on price of beef continuing to go up. What are Republicans doing to get this cost of living under control?
It is on everybody's mind. It certainly is me at my house. And, you have so many proteins to choose from, and all commodities go through peaks and valleys. It is a global market. But we will be seeing a difference, I truly believe, because of so many things.
You have so many
It's so
proteins
crazy.
to choose from. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, I
Yeah.
think there are other options, and people got to, everybody want to talk about Maine. People want to talk about Graham Plattner, but I want to hear more people talking about Scott Cullum, honey. Scott Cullum.
Yes. You are people, so.
I, I guess I am people. Can we lighten the moment?
Is it lighter?
Yes, okay. Sports is lighter. Maybe this is also not a light topic because the president is making sports unavoidable.
Mhm.
He went to the Knicks game. People at Madison Square Garden, I do not think appreciated the president at the Knicks game on Monday. This was their reaction when they showed him on the screen during the national anthem. Baby, they snatched Trump down off that screen so quick. They snatched him.
I
Ooh, get him off, get him off, get him off.
get him. No, no.
No,
Abort,
no, no.
abort.
You know what? They probably thought they not gonna boo during the national anthem. Them Knicks fans, baby, and some Spurs fans still were
They
like,
have never been in New York if they
"Boo!"
think that people ain't gonna boo at any point they want. New Yorkers do what the hell they want.
Avery Wilson, who is the Grammy-nominated artiste who was singing the national anthem, he sang down, okay, even over the
Yeah.
boos. He was like, "For the rest."
Yeah, he said, I'm gonna keep going.
Shout out to Avery Wilson, honey. Just a quintessential, like, I'm sad that
Talent.
like Trump kind of ruined his moment. He is a quintessential talent, a big
Yeah.
Knicks fan. They think he's a good luck charm.
The thing that was so funny to me, we should put this in too, guys, is when Trump was asked about it, when Trump was asked about the boo when he was on the tarmac from the reporters, he said he think they were cheering.
It was certainly amazing. It was I think mostly cheers. It was loud and it was very enthusiastic.
Now, sir.
Okay.
Now, sir.
Okay.
I think, as someone who has gotten booed one time, it was once, it is very disconcerting. But
I've
Trump
been
should be
booed
used
before.
to it. Well, you got booed. Who booed
I got
you?
booed. Some DC people booed me the other day. DC and Maryland.
The other
Let me tell you
day?
something. Yes, I was. Now we on a tangent, but yes, the other day. This
Oh,
was
yes,
maybe.
you told me about this.
Yes, my for people who don't know, my husband he runs the Restaurant Association of Metropolitan Washington, and they do this big awards thing. During the honor celebration, I interviewed Mayor Bowser, the outgoing mayor of DC, and then they flipped it on me, and Mayor Bowser said they told me she actually had some questions for me, but I'm in a room
Set you up.
on this stage. I was set up. She asked me about Maryland crabs or some other kind of crab, or like, and I was just like, oh, neither. South Carolina crabs, and everybody was like, it was like a pause in the room, and then I started explaining South Carolina crabs. I said, you put them in the pot, and then you get some
Yes.
egg. Boo!
I'm a big-
I said egg. I said egg. All you heard was boo. Boo, boo. And I was just like, no, eggs and it's so, boo, boo. And I was like, okay, I'm fine being unpopular.
Yeah.
And I kept trying to explain the crabs, and the mayor was like, you just need to let it go and move on. And I did not, so the one thing that will bring the DC, Maryland, Virginia together, baby, do not come for the Maryland crabs, okay?
Oh,
I'm
true.
going to post a picture of the South Carolina crabs, okay? Because the crabs
Oh,
is good.
baby,
I
the
just
South
didn't
Carolina crabs are the shit. To be very clear,
I did not
as-
explain it well,
Mhm.
but I digress. The World Cup, it starts this week. And the Department of Homeland Security policies under the Trump administration, Eugene, well, they are having a direct effect, not just on the players, but also on the referees. The Iraqis team photographer was actually denied entry into the United States. One of their players was held for 7 hours before they let him in. And then there's that referee from Somalia. Did you see
Yes,
that?
apparently one of the best referees in the world, just trying to fly in over the weekend. This is Omar Artin. I hope I'm saying his name right. He was named as Referee of the Year last year
Oh.
by the Confederation of African Football. Because that's not football like we do it. It's like F-U.
Foot.
F-U-T bowl. And because he is Somali, he was stopped at the Miami airport. He told the New York Times that he was interviewed, you guys, for 11 hours, held for several more, and then put on a plane to, was it home? No, Istanbul, Turkey.
Let me just say something. This is one of the top 5 racist things America has ever engaged in. And to be clear, we have a strong
We have a
track
strong-
record here
it's a long
in America.
list.
Chattel slavery, the internment of the Japanese,
Yes.
Jim Crow, so
The Trail
this
of
is not-
Tears.
the Trail of Tears, right? So this is actually not new to America, but it is in fact racist. These people are being picked out of lines and questioned because of what they look like. So the fact that the World Cup is being played here and the players and the referees can't even get in, the team folks can't even get in without a conundrum. This is the FIFA.
It's insane.
FIFA like
not
FIFA like reefer.
Oh
FIFA.
Lord.
FIFA.
Yes.
The fact that FIFA still went ahead and like wanted to smooth everything over to keep the World
Trump.
Cup games here.
Gave Trump that
I
award.
think,
Maybe he got the FIFA Peace Prize.
yeah, they made it up. I think it was a egregious mistake, and somebody need to hold the FIFA people accountable.
Now, this is what U.S. Customs and Border Protection said. In a statement, they said that their decisions were made on a case-by-case basis, but they did not provide details about why the referee was denied entry. Artin said, and he told the New York Times, that border officials had asked him repeatedly if he had ever met anyone from Al-Shabaab. He said he replied that he knew nothing about the militant group and was simply a soccer referee going about his damn business to do his job.
Why would they think he knows anything about Al-Shabaab? Why would they think he's a terrorist just because he's Somalian?
No idea.
You know what? I don't think
idea.
every white man in America is a school shooter. I mean, like that, I have to put it in stark terms because that is what they are doing with this profiling of people.
Now,
Eugene
explain
just
why
quit
you
the
said that,
podcast.
please.
Because
You look like I got on sweatpants, or I would stand up and walk out.
okay, let me go back to what you said about Mr. Artan. Why did they think he knew Al-Shabaab? Why did they think he was a terrorist? They were racial profiling. The Somalis, the Iraqis, El Salvadorian, people from El Salvador.
Everyone brown and black.
Literally, it's like y'all are not beating the racism allegations.
And now, if there was derogatory information, as Andrew Giuliani said, then yes, that is Giuliani's son, the head of the White House task force on the FIFA World Cup 2026, they could release it and say, this is what we actually found out about him. He isn't just a simple referee, but I don't think we've seen that. And when I don't see information as a reporter, I always err on the side of someone is keeping something quiet for a reason. So there's that. And then there's the Iranian team, Simone.
Oh, yes. You know that Trump banned the team from spending the night on U.S. soil? Apparently, they're not even good enough to sleep here.
See.
Do you know what that means? That when the Iranian team plays in Los Angeles on Monday, they have a kickoff at 6 p.m. LA time. After the game, they have to get to LAX and they have to fly to Tijuana so they can go to bed.
Yeah. And they are not Mexican, so Tijuana is not their home. I just think that, like, this, just to be clear, when you talk to folks for years, and especially after Trump won, was like, oh my God, they cannot have the World Cup in the Americas, right? There cannot be games in the United States because of this. And people said those folks were being too alarmist, that everything was going to be okay. And of course, oh my God, like the athletes and the referees will be fine. And look at them.
The athletes and the referees are not fine. They are not okay. And can I just note, obviously, we are in the middle of a war with Iran, a war of choice that the president started. But we are not at war with the people of Iran.
And finally, there's the matter of Trump's birthday on Sunday. He is turning 8, the big 80. Maybe that's why he's falling. He's allegedly falling asleep. He is celebrating his birthday.
Are you okay?
No, are you okay? I hope the bosses are. This is what happens when this woman doesn't sleep.
Does the president not look 80?
He
you know what? He looks like a different kind of 80. I saw a video of former Senator Tom Daschle the other day, who also, I believe, is about 80. He looks phenomenal. But you know what? The presidency does age you. Go ahead. Jim Clyburn's also 80-something. He don't look like the president.
I think he's 85.
Exactly.
I think he's 85. He
Nancy
did.
Pelosi
When I
also
talked to him the other
80-something.
day, yes. There's some 80-year-olds.
80 has range.
Yes. Trump is celebrating his birthday by hosting a UFC fight on the White House lawn. We, Simone, were driving to a source dinner last night and actually saw it all lit up for the first time.
It was crazy.
It's crazy. It is actually.
It was so crazy.
It's ugly also. I mean, I'm not a UFC person, but I think Like, I know that I've seen a couple fights, not the whole fight, but, you watch it, they're in little shorts and they beat each other up. It's boxing without rules, it seems. But one of the things I think that's
Oh
so
my
interesting,
gosh.
other than, like, the details of this, is that
Mhm.
this is very American, actually. Throwing
Say
people
more.
into, like, a gladiator style octagon and
Mm,
having them beat each other to a bloody pulp,
mm,
having them the example of what masculinity is. It feels
mm,
very Trumpian. It feels very of the moment. And frankly,
mm.
I think it's very strange for there to be a UFC fight at the White House, at the People's House, at your home, y'all. That's your home, not the president's. They get to lease it for 4 years with an option for renewal. That's from Scandal. If you know, you know. But the fact that it's happening, I think it's a
Mhm.
perfect metaphor for the world in which we live, and more importantly, the world in which some people who have a certain view of masculinity want us to live.
There's weight requirements for the soldiers who would like to attend. Michael Steele keeps talking about this on our show, and I had no idea. So first of all,
Yeah.
they want the military to attend. They have to
Mhm.
they have to pay their own way to get there,
Yeah.
and they have to fit a
Height
certain
and
weight
weight.
height
Yeah.
and weight. It's a
Yeah.
height and weight requirement
According to
that
reporting.
yes, the president of the United States doesn't fit this height or weight requirement. Like this is just it's crazy. It's crazy. It's like the emperor has no clothes. He is
Ugh.
not who he thinks he is. The
Mhm.
president is unwell. He is not okay. And
We all
this little
think that
UFC fight is not gonna
we all think our height
distract
and weight
me.
may be a little different than what it really is. Imma leave it there. I
We're
don't
gonna
think
leave it
Trump
right
will.
there. I mean, a lot of other things happen, but let's just talk about pride.
Let's just talk about pride.
Let's talk about pride.
Um, Now it is Pride Month, as we all know. We've talked
It's also
about it
about to be
on
Juneteenth.
here. It is also
Two
yeah, that's
things
when I
can be
feel
true at the same time.
that's when I feel my most powerful. The gay and black in me become one
It's
fully
when
for
it's when
24
the
hours, and
stars
and I
align.
can fucking fly. That's when I'm the most powerful. It's gonna be a great show that weekend. But in the South, where my family's from, a few states are trying to rebrand June as something other than Pride. The Associated Press
Mm.
published the story about this last week. What's the saying? The people are always like, I want small government, just small enough to fit it in your bedroom, because that's the
Oh,
focus.
oh,
That is the focus.
oh.
Because I
You
guess
know
they
what?
forgot about the pocket, and now they want to be up
Oh.
in people's bedrooms and more and more and more and more in their bathrooms, and up in their houses, up in their uteruses. Uteri?
I thought these are people that believed in that the government should stay out of people's
Mhm.
personal lives and personal business, and the
Allegedly.
government shouldn't be telling people what to
It's
do.
just out of their business, is what they want.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't
Mhm.
apply to gay people, trans
Mhm.
people, women,
Mhm.
people of
Mhm.
color,
Mhm. Mhm.
immigrants.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
guess
Mhm.
anybody that's not a straight white man who's
Mhm.
Christian. Because
Cisgender.
also,
Yeah,
if you
cool.
happen to be maybe Muslim, they don't even like
Well,
that.
mhm.
So, you know what? 2 weeks ago, I don't know if you saw this, but Alabama Governor Kay Ivey, she officially declared June 2026, wait for it, Strong Families Month. She even signed a proclamation, okay? And let me read. Where's this proclamation? Let me read part of it for you. Homes led by stable parents and a father and a mother, okay, provide children with the structure and discipline necessary to succeed. Now, I want to be very clear, they're using very benign language that a lot of people would agree with.
They're like,
There's a lot of
yeah.
people who would be like,
Mhm.
yeah. However, I don't think
Mhm.
Kay Ivey I think she was saying a little bit more than that.
Mhm. I know a lot of people who have two fathers, two mothers, who are doing just fine. In April, also,
Mm-hmm.
Tennessee passed a resolution to designate June Nuclear Families Month. And the woman who wrote it spoke to WHLJ, that's the local station in Johnson City, Tennessee. Let's listen to this.
Mm.
I first got this idea whenever I saw it's the Italian Prime Minister, and she dedicated June and had a nuclear family celebration.
She also told the station, quote, "We all know what that month is across America and many other states and really all over the world. It's celebrating pride and celebrating something that is not what the foundation of this country was built on and is something completely opposite to our state." No, you know what the country was built on? Slavery, but we're going to move on from that.
Slavery.
I
No,
think-
actually, we can't move on from slavery. We will never move on from slavery. That's what they
Ever.
want us to do.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I think it's an important point what you just said, because her
Hmm.
saying it's not what the foundation of this country was built on and it's something completely opposite to our state. They are talking about who belongs. They is in. I'm assuming this young lady is a Republican, Republican
Lakey
persuasion.
Derrick.
Licky.
I think it's Lakey Michael
Lakey,
Steele.
Lakey Derrick. Not the chairman catching us straight here,
Literally. Well,
because he will butcher a name and be like, "I'm
is.
sorry."
Yeah. And then make
He-
it a weird one.
They're trying to tell us who is and is not American, and they're trying to
Yeah.
say LGBTQ plus people are not foundational to this country. There were gay people back when the country was founded, child.
Okay, I just want people to. I just want these people to have a brain for a second. If you think for one damn second that all them men went in them heels and them powdered wigs, one some of them up in the same bed together, you have another thing coming. The fact that men and women were not able to hang out, they all together in the rooms, the men all together. You think all of them were straight? They were talking about what? Fucking sports? No. That's why
I'm about to Google. I've never Googled. I should have Googled this before we started recording. I'm about to Google, were any of the founders gay?
Probably not openly. But like a lot of these men slept in the same bed. Abraham Lincoln had a friend that he slept in the same bed. Now, there's never been any proof that he was a homosexual, but there are a lot of gays that feel like he is. And a lot of historians have a lot of questions. But I think the thing that you said most importantly, and what she said, is not what the foundation of this country was built on. So what she is saying, that the only things that matter in the year of our Lord 2026, 250 years into this experiment that is America, are the things that were happening at that time. That means her ass couldn't vote, so I guess she need to get up out of whatever office she at. That means that me and you could not be a full human, so I guess we going out back to the fields. Like, what is the?
I
what is
might
the
have been in the
line?
house. Let's be honest. You would have been in the house as well.
Yes, I would have. I would have been sneaking out sugar cubes and stuff for folks. I would have been
As
resistant,
because
spy
you would have been
inside.
exactly because you would have been
Yeah.
on the side of Harriet and them.
Correct.
Get it?
Correct.
Come on now, because
Correct. Let's be very fucking clear.
all skin folk ain't.
Kinfolk. Now, so this frustration that I continue to have, and I think you have as well, let me share this, is that there are so many things that are happening to the American people.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many things. And what your lawmakers focus on tell you what they think is important. And so what Lakey thinks is the most important thing to do for the folks of Tennessee is to tell queer people that they don't belong in that state. That is what they're saying, right? There are a lot of damn months. They can pick any other month, right? Nuclear Families Month. Okay. Okay,
It is not
sure.
just, your point is so right, and it's not just Lakey. The governor of Indiana also rebranded June as Nuclear Family Month, and the governor of Utah and the governor of Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders of Arkansas, deemed it Fidelity
And just to be
Month.
clear, the governor of Utah, though, a lot of Democrats be celebrating and say they love so much because he stands up to Donald Trump. But let's move on from that.
Well, he was deeming it Fidelity Month, which emphasizes fidelity, I'm using air quotes, to faith, country, and family.
Maybe you
And
should talk to
they
Donald
never-
Trump about fidelity.
Let me take a
Ask the
sip.
wives. Ask the wives. I didn't say it.
Now, in Arkansas and Utah, they never commented on how those families might be composed. But just last week, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the governor of Arkansas, she had a little post on X, and she posted a link to an article about her proclamation that declared, quote, another red state is counter-programming Pride Month. It's given homophobia and it's given racism.
And meanwhile, you have Republicans who are queer, who still support this president, still support the party, and yet they are not letting you all the way in. And I think that is something that I think is so interesting. You have, like, it is not as if there aren't any gay Republicans. And
Richard
so,
Grenell, who had worked in the Trump administration and is one of the chief cheerleaders for Trump right now, he would not qualify as a nuclear family. Scott Bessent, who is the Secretary of the Treasury, who is
Say it.
openly gay. You don't got a nuclear family according to this, Mr. Bessent. Are you okay with that? I mean, again, there are gay Republicans. There are Republicans who are trans. This is not just about Democrats. But Eugene, why are they always trying to make it about, why are they always bringing this up? Nobody
Because
else is bringing it up. The
they
Republicans
want
are
an
always bringing
enemy.
this and race up. They
They
bringing up
always
gay
want an
people and they bringing
enemy.
up race.
the thing that is so interesting is that all queer people want to do is live their lives. This idea that they're trying to indoctrinate your little children, they don't care about your children, actually. They don't. They want to live their own lives. What they want for children is for them to have what we did not have as kids, which is to have a world that will accept them no matter what, that they would have the adults around them who will say, baby, everything that is happening to you that you feel does not make you a bad person. It does not make you evil. There's not a demon inside of you that is forcing you to feel this way. This is who you are. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to make sure that you know that so that you don't kill yourself. Because to this day, so many queer kids, whether they are gay, lesbian, bisexual, or most importantly, transgender, those are the kids that are killing themselves. So what some of these folks are saying, that is more important for them to call something a stupid fucking name than whether or not a child feels supported enough to make sure that they stay on this earth. That is what we're talking about here. Those are the stakes. Those are the stakes. And I think when we talk about it as kind of like, oh, they don't care about same-sex marriage anymore. It's 20 points down from a few years ago with Republicans. Whatever. The marriage is one thing. It is, are these children going to be able to make it to 18? Are they going to be able to make it to 25? Are they going to be able to make it to 30? Are they going to be able to live a full life knowing who they are, celebrating who they are, and being able to do everything else? When I came out, Simone, came out late, right? Like in the theory of how folks want to. But I came out right when I was supposed to, when I felt ready. I was 27 years old, so it's only been 10 years. I'm 37 this year. And when I came out, the thing that I realized was like I could die and no one would know who I am. And that was what made me come out. If I'm being frank, it was because of Pulse. Pulse happened, and I was in Missouri working at a place called Newsy. And I was sitting in my little terrible apartment. It was lived in an apartment building with a bunch of college students. I was too old to be living there, but it was very cheap. And so I'm in there, Pulse is happening, and I did my last
The
prayer.
shooting at
The
Pulse
shooting at
nightclub, for
Pulse,
folks that
yes,
don't
which is
remember.
10 years ago, this month. And so I'm sitting in the room, and I did the last pray the gay away that I've done in my life that day. And I said, God, if this is not of you, if I'm not supposed to be this, if this is evil, if this makes me a bad person, I want it out. And I'll do whatever else you want. I want it out. I woke up the next day, still was gay. So, clearly.
Oh, I need a tissue.
Clearly, it is
I
okay.
need
And
a
to the kids
tissue.
and for the kids and the parents who are watching this.
I
And who
feel so
have
bad
queer
that you were trying to
kids.
pray the gay away. It's just
Oh
who
my
you
God, my whole
are.
life. Like I think, and there are so many people going through this and who have it worse. Because when I came out, my friends and family basically, well, many of them shrugged. Many of them were like, well, we knew. I was like, well, you could have told a bitch. Like you could have said it was okay. But I think there are so many people who are going through that exact same thing or worse. And to know that there are adults out there who aren't weighing whether or not it is important for these kids to live and live as themselves and then be able to be full members of society. Because after I came out, Simone, the thing that was so interesting is that as it was happening, one, it was so fucking stressful. But as you're doing it, you start pulling off all this baggage, right? And as I came out, especially when I moved here to DC, which was the gayest city per capita, that was one of the reasons why I was really excited to come to DC. That was in the New York Times. And so I started coming out to my coworkers, and what I realized is I had so much more room in my head to live. I had more room to be a better friend, to be a better worker, to be a better brother and son, or a person who feels like they can fulfill the things they're supposed to do in life. After I came out, I was no longer thinking about like, okay, don't hold your hand like this. Okay, if you look at your nails, you gotta look at it like this. You can't look at your nails like this. Don't put your hands on your hips. When you're at a desk, don't lean too much. Tote your ass out. People gonna think you want it. Like I spent so much time thinking about that shit. And so and I'm not the only one. All queer people do this. You're always thinking about how to perform what the world tells you is masculine. And so then once I came out and I threw all of that off, that is when my career changed. That is when I fell in love. That is when I got the strongest friendships of my life. And
When
they
you
were
leaned into
reinforced
being your
when I
authentic
leaned
self.
into being my authentic self.
Mm.
And the fact that there are kids who because they don't have support from their family or friends, and because the state is
Mm.
attacking them, and they feel there's only one way out, and that is to kill themselves. Those are the stakes. And the frustration I have with the folks that are in Capitol Hills around the country is that they think it's a game. They see this shit
Mhm.
as a game. They see these people as political pawns. Let's play with this. But they're playing with people's lives. And so the blood of these kids are on their fucking hands. And I think that is just that. I might get in trouble for that, but like that is how I feel. Because if you are not going to protect kids, what the fuck are you doing? The least among us, the ones who deserve the most, the best treatment. And if you're not focused on them, all of them, then what are you doing as an adult?
Mm. First of all, you had me crying over here.
It's
Like,
just like and
you
I
had
had
me
it
crying, and
easy.
and I appreciate you for not me, not me using my therapy language. I appreciate you for sharing, but I really do, because your to the point that you made, your story is not unique. There are many
Mhm.
people that felt the way you did. I never knew that you tried to pray it away. That is
Oh my God,
so
yes.
crazy. But the
Yeah.
fact that you are living your authentic self now, that you are thriving in life, you're not just surviving, you are thriving.
Yeah.
You're thriving
Thank
because
you.
you're leaning into 1,000% who you are. You're not putting on anything else for the rest of the world. I think that there are people out there that need to hear that. And
Yeah.
you are, I want to be very, very clear. What Eugene just said about the state, and by state, we're talking about the governments, state
Mhm.
governments across the country, but also the federal government. What he said about the blood on the hands of the state, the hate rhetoric that happens online, it spills over into our everyday regular lives. It pops up in schools, in community centers, in organizations, right? It is, people have been radicalized for what they're seeing online, from what they see on television, right? From what they're reading in the newspapers, from
Yeah.
what elected officials are saying and doing. And so elected officials, they have a responsibility here. Just like when there's a rise in violence, political violence across the country, and every time, somebody tries to assassinate the president, everybody's like, see, we got to take the
Yeah.
rhetoric down.
Yeah.
I agree, we need to take the rhetoric down, but who are the people with the rhetoric? Who are the
Right.
people with the policies that are putting the target on the back of other Americans? And to be clear, the facts say, and the data shows, it is one political party that believes this is a game, and that is the Republican Party apparatus here in the United States of America. So we got to talk about that, okay? So the culture wars are not a distraction. The culture wars are, in fact, the playbook. And the culture wars, it is not an aside, the attack on LGBTQ plus people. It is not an aside, the attack on Black people in this country. It is not an aside, the attack on women's reproductive autonomy, being able to get the health care I need, even if that health care is an abortion. That is not an aside. Those are my kitchen table issues.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
Whew. I guess I
Okay.
can skip therapy this week. This was very healing.
No. We still need No. You need to go, and you need to let
You
your
said-
therapist know that you told the world all your business today.
All my business.
so that the therapist can say, well, now why did we feel the need to do that? Do you feel good about that? And I hope you feel good about it.
I do.
Because
I do.
I think you're gonna help some people. We're gonna take it to another level, or frankly, we're gonna take it to outer space.
A
The
new
legendary-
stratosphere, honey.
A new we going out. And the legendary Neil deGrasse Tyson is going to help us think about some loftier things. I just love space. Eugene loves space. And
Yes,
so everybody
yes.
knows we did record this conversation a few days ago. That's why Eugene and I are in different outfits. So if you're
Yes.
wondering what is going on, that's what's going on.
Welcome back, and welcome Neil deGrasse Tyson. Of course, you know his work in astronomy, space, helping the less STEM-minded people among us understand things like astrophysics, black holes, and gravity, those little bitty things. He's also been using his skills as a communicator to show people how to inoculate themselves against misinformation. We'll get into that. His latest book, Take Me to Your Leader, is a bestseller. And yes, we do want to talk to him about aliens, obviously, but more importantly, since science is figuring out how everything works, we want to talk with him about how space, the moon, UFOs are working or being used in this moment in history.
Bring it on.
Sir, thank
Bring
you
it
so
on.
much for coming on. Bring it on. I know all of that. Thank you for coming on.
I'm here for you. I'm here for you.
We're excited.
We
Yes.
are very
There's lots
excited.
of questions.
You know what, Dr. DeGrasse Tyson, it really does all go back to science. I was like, do I look a little dark? Do I look too light? And he's like, well, actually, the reflection of the shirt. I'm like, not science.
Not a yes
I
or
tried-
no.
Not a yes or a no.
I try to avoid the word actually when I explain things, but yes,
Oh,
it is an actually
why?
moment.
To be
No,
clear.
because it's so pedantic. Actually, it's the blah blah blah. Nobody wants to hear that. So
It's very true. It's
Okay,
very true.
I'm getting gems already. Let me get
This
my
is
writing down.
exciting.
Okay,
Right.
can we talk about the deep fakes?
Lately, I've been doing calculations, as well as looking back at old NASA footage and raw data from satellites hovering above Earth. And I just can't escape the conclusion that the Earth might actually be flat.
that's not me. It was never me. Those aren't my words. That's what's called a deep fake.
Baby,
That was scary as hell.
they were
I'm
the
spooked.
right. The podcast team
Yeah.
was playing some of the audio before we got started, just I guess to make sure it worked. And when I heard it, I'm like, "Is the Earth flat?" And
I'm
then so I
leaving.
looked at the screen. I was like, "Wait, now what?" And then I looked at the screen and you pulled it back, and I'm like, "What is
So
going
ca- ca-
on?"
Can you explain what happened here?
Yes. So beginning a year and a half or 2 years ago, I started noticing deep fakes of me with me and my words and me sitting in my office uttering script that I didn't write, I never thought, I've never said, and on the premise that it's actually me. So that would be a
Yeah.
deep fake that of the illegal kind, even though we don't really have laws yet
Mm.
related to it. Okay. Then there's other fakes, which are just sort of fun and parody, where I get babyfied in a conversation with
Yeah, I saw this.
NASA. There are plans to cut half of its science budget, including the removal of the Office of the Chief Scientist. So you want to cut that to save money? How much money is that? How much is the total NASA budget compared to your tax dollar? It is less than 0.4% of your tax dollar.
So you can't chase after them because they're just having fun with my actual words placed
Yeah.
inside of a baby. Okay. Then, April of this year, there's a movie trailer called Pie Hard. Pie, like pie, mathematics.
Like
3.14.
314. Yes.
Yeah,
3.14,
Pie Hard,
something,
where
something,
I'm an
something.
action hero trying to figure out who is meddling with the laws of physics of the universe. And it turns out to be Stephen Hawking.
The math doesn't add up anymore, which means someone, something is changing the math.
It's like they built a back door into the universe.
Uh-oh.
Hello, Neil.
And there's a chase scene, and there's an alien, and everything that you've ever seen in any crazy action movie is in this 2.5-minute trailer. And so that one is, do people think it's actually me or not? It says AI or Die. That's the name of the production company. So you know it's AI to begin with. But that's one that's a fuzzier line, right? It's
Yeah.
clearly they're just having fun. The video we just saw of me saying Earth is flat, AI has the capacity to put words in my mouth using the integrity that I've long hard earned and using that to distort reality. So that's a problem. So we made that video to highlight how easy it is to be fooled.
And it looks just like you, and it
I
sounds
thought it
just
was
like
you.
The enunciation, the ways in which you're speaking, and so I guess I wonder, as someone who thinks about this a lot and probably is now much more focused on it than a lot of us are. What are your biggest concerns? Because now me and Simone have been talking about this for a long time.
Yeah. So in terms of deep fakes, my quote reputation is pales compared with if you deep fake a politician who's a head of state claiming that they're about to drop a bomb or declare war or even surrender, whatever. You can disrupt geopolitics badly
Can
as a
I-
destabilizing force.
Can
Yeah.
I note? I don't disagree with you that the ability to deepfake politicians and world leaders is actually a huge problem that folks have to figure out what we're going to do about that. But I would actually argue someone deep faking someone like you, it matters. You know, when I worked at the White House, I worked there during COVID. We was trying to clean it up after the current president, who was the president before,
So it
messed
was
it up.
your fault. Yeah,
Oh.
okay. No.
Just won't be clear. It wasn't us. You know, we came
It
in.
wasn't
It was
you.
the
Okay.
damage was done. We vaccinated the world, America.
Okay.
We had a lot of meetings, specifically about how to get people to take the vaccine. And the research told us, and the experts were telling us, that the best way to get people to believe in the science was to get people whom they respected, whom they believed, whom they thought were the experts, who they trusted, to talk about it. And so it wasn't then President Biden or then Vice President Harris. The best
It was
folks
people
were
like you.
yeah, your pediatricians or the
Yeah,
doctors or the
it's
scientists.
more complicated. It's more complicated than that because many people get their information from the internet,
Well,
and if not social media, then other platforms like YouTube. There will always be some pedigreed expert who has a contrarian view on the consensus. And so you can find someone with pedigree saying, oh, the vaccine is going to kill you. And well, I'm an MD with some medical center, and they say something that resonates with what you want to believe, what you want to be true, and that then becomes your source. What we've lost is people's awareness and trust in what I'll call a scientific consensus. There's not a
Yes.
good word to describe it because consensus is, the word technically refers to opinions. But in
Yeah.
science, it's not about opinions. It's about what do the data show? What do the observations show? And a scientific consensus is 12 different people did different experiments that got the same result. And there's one guy who did some other experiment, got a different result. Oh, and they've got a YouTube channel and they're charismatic, and you're going to ignore everybody else because the consensus doesn't have charisma. It's just data. Consensus doesn't have a YouTube channel. And so that's a problem. That's a problem. So it's more nuanced than just find a person who you trust and then believe them. Not only that, I don't want you to do something just because I told you. I want you to do something because I convinced you why you should do it. So that when you do it, you're not doing it just because I said so. You're doing it because I gave you an argument that you then understood that you can then repeat to others. That's the difference.
This all sounds and comes down to critical thinking, whether it's misinformation, these deepfakes on the internet, or folks who, say they're doing their own research when it comes to vaccines or ivermectin, and they decide that their research is better than the folks who have been studying this for a long time. I think you've said in the past that critical thinking should be taught and should be its own class in schools. When you look out into the world and you think about the ways in which we are all have so much access to information and also ignorant and sometimes by choice of so many things, and the ways that politicians use that ignorance and that lack of critical thinking
Exploit
skills
it,
that are
yes.
in their world exactly against folks. I'm concerned about it. I know someone's concerned about it. I believe you're concerned about it as well.
Yeah, I want people to be inoculated against charlatans. The real problem in the world is knowing enough about a subject to think you're right, but not enough about the subject to know you're wrong. There's this valley of perceived knowledge that is really profound ignorance. And this is the person who does 10 minutes of, quote, their own research on YouTube, and they're going to defy the recommendations of the CDC. Okay? By the way, now there's meddling in the CDC. All right?
Yeah.
So if you change out people for whatever is your ideology, then no longer can you even trust official postings of official organizations. So yeah, it's really bad out there. And the extent to which people cannot decide what is true and what is not is the unraveling of an informed democracy.
Are we screwed? Can we fix it?
Yeah, we're screwed.
I'm like, this
Well, in the
sounds
age of AI,
hopeless.
critical thinking is actually one of the most important skills because, right? Like critical
we're not
thinking is what we
getting
all
it.
need.
Okay, no, let me not leave you with such a bleak outlook here.
You can. You wouldn't be the first.
We are screwed for a while until it gets so bad that pick an adversary. China starts beating us in every possible way, in renewable energy, in vaccine treatment, in antiviral serums, in space exploration, and they have special research programs just working on quantum entanglement, for example. And as we're firing our scientists, not rehiring them, we will just simply fade on the world stage and become irrelevant. Not only for not having the scientists, but there's a time delay between when you get rid of your scientists and how it then affects your economy. Because frontier research, which people like to want to judge, why are you doing that? I don't see how that relates, because the science fundamental research, not the R in R&D for corporations. I'm talking about the R that goes on with scientists in laboratories in universities typically. That research is 5 years, 10 years, in some cases 20 years ahead of what would ultimately stoke your economy. And that is, we're just taking out our kneecaps by doing this. We'll coast for a little bit, and then we will sink fast, because the foundations
I thought you were going to make
of
us
our
feel better, sir.
No, hang on. So the foundations, I'm getting there. The foundations of our economy will be flattened, okay? Do you realize that half of my fellow graduate students, when I was getting my PhD, were foreign nationals? Why? Because we were where the opportunities were. Now we have this xenophobia, and we don't want to let in foreign students. And do you realize 1/3 of all the Nobel Prizes in sciences won by Americans were won by immigrants to America? A third. So somebody is missing these foundational facts. We will fade, and at the point we are at the bottom, Republicans and Democrats will look at each other and say, we got to fix this, and we have to fix it together, because we're no longer relevant in the world. And if you're going to trail the world in practically everything, including your economy, it's time to wake the fuck up, okay? And forgive my language. And
no,
when
that's
do
a
that,
It's a podcast, and I am, frankly, I'm glad that you are fired the fuck up.
So when that happens, then we align all of our forces to recover what was lost. And we've done that before. 1957, October 4th, Sputnik flew. And we didn't have a space program yet, okay? We freaked out. And we said, oh my gosh, the Russians are beating us. We got to show the world that we're better, not them. And so within a year, we created NASA. Within a few years, we had our first satellite. And we had to catch up. We spent 10 years catching up. And then we landed on the moon, and we said, we win. We made that our goal. When at the time, what? Is that even possible? So I've seen the United States bounce back. And we only bounce back when we are so far down that our in-house bickering looks trite and trivial compared with the greater needs to regain what so much of us just took for granted.
I just want to say that didn't make me feel that much better. But go
You
on.
know what? It made me feel better, because at the end of the day, there's a path forward. That a path might
There is
not
It's
be around the
a raggedy
corner.
path forward with glass and rocks and
There's a
knives
path.
on it.
There is
Okay,
a path.
So
Okay.
if there's glass you're worried of stepping on, just wear shoes, okay?
Okay.
Okay? And if the rocks that is an uneven terrain, practice some balance. Do some yoga before you go on the rocks.
Come on, science.
Come on, science.
Okay.
There's some,
I'm-
where there's a
Scientific
will, there's a
fixes.
way. Okay.
Correct.
My only point is, once we're aligned in mission statement, nothing is in our way. Do you realize that in 1940, we created the element plutonium? That element doesn't exist anywhere in the universe. We created it in a laboratory. Within 5 years, it was weaponized and became the first atomic bomb. Talk about resolve. Oh my gosh. And in 1940, we were not yet at war. 1941 hits. Oh my gosh. We're attacked at Pearl Harbor. Everybody was aligned. Congress voted unanimously in the declarations of war. So it's unfortunate that war is a force that enables that, but so would falling behind in your economy. And that's basically what will happen. It's not happening yet, but it will happen, because you're taking out the science at the base. The last 18 months, the government has lost 10,000 PhD scientists in the ranks. That'll come back and bite you on the ass. And we will recover. So that is the source of hope here.
That is the hope. Okay. We gonna recover, Eugene. But right now we're in the trenches. I feel like that's my for the
clearly.
people explanation
There you go.
of what our resident scientist just laid out. So I find space, like most people, so interesting. When I worked at the
And
White House,
terrifying.
space was one of the pieces of the portfolio I worked on because the vice president is head of the Space Council. When the government released a lot of files about the
Yes.
UFOs,
Yes.
Um,
UAPs now.
UAPs, yes.
It got
Yeah.
rebranded.
Yeah. We
you know,
love
from-
a rebranding, honey. She's a
You can
comp
rebrand it
professional.
from
She knows
unidentified
rebranding.
flying objects to unidentified anomalous phenomena. Who they kidding?
Now,
They're talking
what do
about
you
UFOs.
feel about this? Yeah, what do you feel about this change? I know you have a whole
No,
op-ed in the Times.
It had a giggle. I did. Thank you for remembering that.
Yes.
For catching that. The UFO had a little giggle factor, and if they rebrand it, then plus it could be any phenomenon also in the oceans, and anomalous is any phenomena that we otherwise have a hard time explaining. So it's a little more encompassing, but face it, they're talking about the same thing. Yeah.
Aliens are clearly real. Correct.
Well, you asking me a question? You just made a statement.
I did make a statement. And I want you to agree with it, because I think you agree. We
Are
ain't the only
aliens
ones.
are aliens real?
Given the age of the universe, given how vast it is, how many stars, how many planets there are, and our catalog is swelling beyond 6,000 exoplanets just in our little sector of the galaxy, given that we are made of the same ingredients, the most common ingredients of the universe itself, it would be inexcusably egocentric to suggest that we are alone in the universe. Given all the places life could thrive and all the ways of being alive that we can even imagine, no one who studied that problem would say we are alone.
Do you think the UAPs and / UFOs are some kind of alien life visiting us?
So that's a different question. Does life
Yeah.
in the universe that we all agree to who studied the problem, and by the way, that's what Obama meant on that podcast
Yes.
when he
Mm-hmm.
said, yeah, I'm sure there are aliens out there.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in what is it?
Area 51?
Area 51. There's no underground facility unless there's this enormous conspiracy, and they hid it from the President of the United States.
What was the first question you wanted answered when you became president?
Where are the aliens?
Where are the aliens?
Everyone thought that like he meant they're in the basement of the White House, and they completely over-interpreted what the man said. He's scientifically literate, and he spoke what is scientific consensus about the likelihood of life in the universe. Have we been visited? So just because you see something you don't know what it is, it doesn't mean you know what it is. That sounds obvious, but look what people do. It did this in the tracking, and it did this. I don't know what it is. It must be aliens. If you don't know what it is, that's period. That's the end of your sentence. It's a mystery. Let's explore it further. That's how science works. If you don't know what it is, get better data. Notice all the images you saw were monochromatic, fuzzy images. When 3 out of 4 people who walk this earth carry a high-resolution data-taking device in their pocket called a smartphone. You could take high-res videos, high-res images, and none of those were high-res videos or images. So why is it that the fuzzier the image is, the less you know what it is and the more likely you are to think it's an alien? Why? And even if you get better data, you might still not be able to explain it. That's possible. I don't have a problem with that. The military budget is what, $1 trillion almost? Let them. I don't want to be harmed by stuff in the sky or in the ocean. Figure it out. Get better data.
Okay, there are a lot of people out there that were of the belief that the government releasing these files was actually like a distraction. And I am somebody that believes that 2 things can be true at the same time. Like, maybe it's not always a mastermind distraction. Maybe there isn't another explanation sometimes. It's not always that the government is trying to distract us from this thing that's happening over here.
Alien files are one of 100 things you could list that would serve as distractions from other things. So it's not uniquely implicatable. as the distracting moment in government today. So fine. And people do want to see what the Pentagon files show and files from other agencies as the president has requested. And that's what's happening now. So it's fun to read over them. You see letters from 1947 commenting on the Roswell crash. You see, people torturously asking themselves, what is this? I can't explain it. Sure. And by the way, nothing in those files was fundamentally different from what I would have presumed to be there after we heard the testimonies in Congress. Right. The whistleblower, the ex-NSA guy, or was it just ex-intelligence, ex-military, and listen to them talk under oath, saying that they have, well, he said non-human biologics, I think was the phrase, and crash saucers and reverse engineered. So we have people telling you this who's not the farmer on the back 40 or the revelers who just came out of the bar at 2 a.m. So there's some integrity to their accounts that makes it different from anybody else who just talking about their abduction and what anal cavities were probed by the aliens, right? So it elevates it to another level. I'm just saying, at this point, is it too much to ask for them to bring out the alien? Is that too much to ask? If you have the alien, just bring it out. And then no one will anymore have to ask, do you believe in aliens? And I'm saying, I don't like to believe in things that I have to believe in to be true.
I want to stay in space. I want to get away from the anal probes. I want to stay in space. When it comes to,
and how big is your ego? Hold on. How big is your ego that aliens came across the galaxy to look up your butthole? How important do you think you are? No, ask yourself that.
Why your butt, not another butt? These are the real
thank
questions.
you. That too. They're looking at my butt.
My beautiful one. Okay, let's move on. There's a lot of questions about space, but one of the things I think that is maybe concerning for a lot of people is the privatization of space, right? You have these billionaires who are going up there in their little phallic symbols and, taking their wives and girlfriends and everyone's calling them astronauts.
I would like to go to space.
NASA. No, you
I
are
want to
not.
do it.
No, you're not. I'm not letting you. That's crazy. No, you can't. No.
Why didn't you let the woman go into space? What you got?
No, because I don't need my girl up there. What if she don't come back? What if something bad happens?
It's a quick up down.
No, no.
Like I wanna get on the Blue Origin flight. I just wanna see it for myself.
No, thank you. No. And no one
then
books Simone
keep your own ass down on Earth. Let other people go up if they want to go up.
No,
do
thank
you
you.
want to
No,
go?
she cannot.
Don't we all want to go?
No.
You don't want to go to space?
Yeah. I would love to go to space. I just do not trust Jeff Bezos to take me to space. That's more,
Okay,
I guess
all right.
that's the case. And I think
Is that
that's
because you
the
just saw his
question.
rocket blow up?
Correct. That would have something to do with it. I do have some questions about it. NASA is retiring the ISS, I think, in 2030.
The International Space Station, for the people that don't know.
They're going to be renting space on private stations, whoever these private stations are. I don't think there's any up there just yet. And there's a lot of questions about accountability. There are a lot of questions about the idea that billionaires and maybe trillionaires, if we get to those at some point, are going to be the people who have the access to space, which is supposed to be a thing that we were all learning from and able to send someone up there, give us some information, and then the world changes based off of that. Do you have concerns about the privatization of the space travel? And no.
Tell us why. Yes, come on. We're going to me and Mr. Grass Tyson are going to space, okay?
Y'all can go.
We're going to leave you down here. We'll be back.
NASA has been in bed with private enterprise since the beginning.
Yeah,
the difference is NASA had specs that needed to be met, and they would bid it out, and it would go to Lockheed. It went to Martin Marietta. It went to Grumman Aerospace on Bethpage, Long Island, made the LEM that landed on the moon. To this day, people walk proud who had aunts and uncles and grandparents who worked on that LEM. It didn't say Grumman on the LEM because it was built to NASA's specs. It only said NASA and USA on all of the parts. What's shifting is private enterprise has interest in going into space. So does NASA. It may be cheaper for NASA to buy parts off of these private enterprises. That's no different from the U.S. Postal Service. Have you ever seen an airplane that said U.S. Postal Service airmail? No, because they rent space in the belly of private enterprise. This is America. What country do you think you live in? So now private enterprise is making a significant presence in space, and NASA said, I'll take 2 of those and 1 of those because I have this other thing I want to do. Oh, by the way, we've already done space station. Now make private space stations. Who cares? The government will always do expensive things first because there's no return on that investment for private enterprises. That's why the Dutch East India Trading Company was not the first Europeans to the New World. It was Columbus, paid by Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand. Okay, there was some private investment in that, but it was a national goal to do that. Once he came back, and here's where the trade winds are, and here's the hostiles, and here's the friendlies, then you can quantify those risks and make a buck out of it, which is exactly what the Dutch East India Trading Company did, as well as others. Point is, NASA already built the space station. NASA's already been to the moon. Now we're going to bring private enterprise to make that happen. Didn't you see the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey? That was 1967, imagining the year 2001. And they're on the space station, and they get there in a space shuttle flown by Pan Am. And there's a Howard Johnson's restaurant there, and there's an AT&T telephone. They knew that if space is going to convert from a space program to a space industry, you need private investment.
So here's my, because we are going to space. Dr. Eugene, we can leave him. The only thing that I'm like, okay, gives me pause about the private enterprise or the privatization of space is that something doesn't feel right about the fact that Elon Musk has all the contracts, has all the satellites, has a lot of information that is very central to some national security issues and interests. And he could decide, he's like Lex Luthor, okay? And Lex Luthor was not a hero in the comics, child.
Not the ones I read.
Okay, so do we really want Lex Luthor to have the keys to the spatial kingdom?
I think if he were not so singular in his ownership of SpaceX, suppose he had long ago sold his interest in it and there was a board and there was a CEO that comes in and out, then you wouldn't be finger pointing to an individual who is singularly wealthy, but SpaceX would have no less control over satellites that are going into space. You don't know who's head of IBM, so you're not pointing fingers at an individual. It's just a company. Who's head of Ford? You don't know who that is. It's just a company, big old companies. But you happen to know that some of the tech bros maintain their interest in their companies. So you're pointing to them as though they're singularly liable. But they're not, they're companies. Just think about it that way.
But they're very untrustworthy characters.
Well, are they any more untrustworthy than a board who has nefarious interests and exploiting people?
No, I don't trust them either, but they ain't got no names.
There you go.
So that's why.
There you go. But we do have a Space Force now that has interest. Oh, by the way, anytime we did anything big in space, it was geopolitically driven. We didn't go to the moon because it was, because we're Americans and it's in our DNA. We went to the moon because Russia threatened us implicitly by their launch of Sputnik, a radio transmitter embedded in the hollowed out shell of an intercontinental ballistic missile. We freaked out when that happened because it was flying over our heads. Now, there are laws that you can't fly in the airspace over countries without agreed treaties, but there was no laws yet for flying in the space above countries. So if they could deliver a radio transmitter over our heads, within 45 minutes, they could deliver a nuclear warhead. And so it was geopolitics that drove the government expenditures on this. Right now, what is that frontier? It's the moon. It's Mars. It's beyond. Private enterprise will be assisting NASA in its goals on the moon. It will not be leading that enterprise.
One of the things that I think is so interesting about you is that you work to make science and space and all of these things that are very confusing and complicated for a lot of regular folk who aren't experts in astrophysicists. You make it accessible to people. And I guess as you in a world in which the critical thinking is low, the schools seem closed, the kids don't seem like they care to learn.
They can't even
like,
write cursive.
They can't even write cursive. But but how important is it to make all of this accessible? Because we were joking at the beginning and before we started the podcast, but science is the root of everything.
Yeah, it is. It is. And in fact, if anyone ever tells you, oh, things happen for a reason, just answer, yeah, the reason is physics. just you give you an answer for anyone who says that. So you saw the excitement over the Artemis launch and the astronauts that went around the moon. So that's the kind of force operator that was happening in the 1960s. You didn't need special programs to get kids interested in science. Science was writ large daily in the headlines. And so when you have big, hairy, audacious projects enabled by government interest, even if it's geopolitically driven, that's the kind of force that can transform a society and have everybody value STEM fields. And STEM fields are the engines of tomorrow's economy. So returning to the moon is a good boost, a good kick in our pants to try to get us back on track for that.
I know we have to go, but I have a burning question. What are your thoughts on the multiverse? Is the multiverse real?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so if you follow our equations through their natural conclusions, and the multiverse just pops out of the calculations. And it's intriguing because it means that before the Big Bang, we were just part of a multiverse and the universe is popping in and out of existence. So, or into existence, unfolding according to slightly different laws of physics that they may have. So it's fun to talk about it. It's fun to manifest it, like in the Marvel comics. There are multiverses in the storytelling. It's made it into our pop culture, but there's no evidence for it yet, but it is theoretically plausible. So we're entertaining what that would mean in terms of future observations and the like.
I'm the reason that we have to go, but now I have another question because I think about this all the time. So when you're a kid, at least when we were kids, I feel like the thing that we learned about the planet and the solar systems were that we were all just going around the sun, right? And then as we got older, I have learned, at least I don't know if you know this, Simone, but and you correct me, obviously, sir, we're going around the sun, but we're also moving. Where
are we
going? The whole universe is just going.
Wait, where are we going? Are we moving?
And then we're gonna crash into Andromeda. It's not good, Simone. We won't see it.
The good doctor is like, their schools don't seem to be open either because we obviously
Open
don't
the
have
schools,
it right.
send Eugene and Simone back to the schools.
We can't tell you everything all at once. It's too much information, okay? No, I'll give an example. There's something called a pedagogical lie. A pedagogical lie is something that it's not intended to mislead or deceive. It's just the first step in the information, in the flow of information. Once you learn that, then I give you more details, okay? I say the Earth is a sphere, okay? That gives you an image in your head. Once you got that, and I say, well, actually the Earth is slightly wider at the equator than it is at the poles by about 15 miles. It's not very much given the size of Earth, but it's a detail on top of your information that it's a perfect sphere. Let me keep going. Oh, by the way, it's slightly wider below the equator than at the equator. So we're pear-shaped, not a sphere. You want to know more? Okay, we're orbiting the sun, but not really. Earth and the moon orbit a common center of gravity, and it's that center of gravity that's orbiting the sun. So Earth is doing these loop-de-loops around the sun in a circular orbit. Oh, actually, it's not a perfect circle. It's an ellipse. We are sometimes closer to the sun and sometimes farther away. Oh, by the way, Earth is tipped on its axis. Oh, by the way, that tip precesses. It wobbles every 26,000 years. Oh, by the way, while we're processing, it bobs up and down every 18 and a half years while it's processing, while it's moving around its center of mass, while it's going around the sun. Oh, by the way, Earth and the sun and all the planets are orbiting the center of the Milky Way galaxy together. So we don't just have an orbit, it's like a helix moving through space. Oh, by the way, the Milky Way and Andromeda are falling towards each other, and they will collide in 5 or 6 billion years. Ask yourself, how much information do you want to know?
I want everything. I'm a journalist.
I want it all.
Where are we going? Where is the galaxy going?
We're falling towards Andromeda
Why?
because we have gravity attracting us.
Ugh, I don't like this.
Well, you don't have any say in the matter. Okay, so you just get real.
Not Uncle Neil getting me together.
I'm just telling it like it is. Keeping 100. The universe is under no obligation to make sense to you.
Mm. And with that,
Mm.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, thank you so much.
He is-
You stressed out Simone.
Neil deGrasse Tyson is officially Uncle Neil.
Yeah.
And Uncle
Okay.
Neil, we will be calling on you again, maybe very
Yes.
soon.
I'll give you my emergency number,
Correct.
the bat signal, and then we'll
Please.
connect up.
The
And I'll
nieces
talk
and
you
the
off the
nephews.
ledge.
The nieces and the nephews have questions. We
Exactly.
appreciate
And I'll
you
talk you
so
off
much.
the ledge when in the emergency case. All right, guys.
Thank
you
you.
so much.
You got it. Good to have you.